like a show that has friendly conversations about politics, philosophy, current events, history, and pop culture. Travis taking a more left stance to the discussion, myself taking more of the right stance, and Jake running our audio and video, telling us why we're both wrong. And that makes us very parched doing all this, thus the cab part of the name of the show. We quench our thirst with some Cabernet Sauvignon and continue our discussion over wine, as all good discussions should be. I am Tanner Hall.
I'm Travis Pedroli.
And I'm Jake Rudder.
And we welcome you to the podcast. So this is our official first episode. We had a pilot episode last week. We're going to try and get that out online some way. Jake, we're probably going to do SoundCloud. That sounds about right.
Yeah, it'll be a very limited release. It'll be a direct download from us, so it's very exclusive.
Yes. Oh, we're only going to play it at listening parties.
Yes.
Yeah.
So probably SoundCloud is where you're probably going to find it, or maybe a podcast website. We will let you guys know on our Facebook. So find us on Facebook, Left Right Cab, Twitter at Left Right Cab, Twitch. We're streaming live on Twitch. Left Right Cab. Everything's Left Right Cab. Yeah. Pretty easy to remember. News and notes, or recap, I should say. Recap of last week. Last week's show, we talked a bit about Trump getting the Nobel Peace Prize, and we felt he was merited. I want to just add a little note to that. He was nominated a second time by the Swedish Parliament for his Serbia and Kosovo, and recently he did Israel and Bahrain. So he had two more things. So my question is, have your opinion?
Israel and the UAE.
No, Bahrain as
Bahrain
well.
as well?
That was a second one, another one that happened this past week. They came to the table too. So my question now that there's another nomination and two more countries, have your opinions changed on it? Is now X amount of countries enough to say, okay, that now he should have it? Has your opinions changed at all?
I mean, so spoiler from last week's, he is definitely warranted in being nominated for it. Whether or not that he should get it just based on that depends on generally who else is nominated for other pieces. But is establishing even the first steps to treaties, de-escalation, yeah, that would be warranted, or a Nobel Peace Prize would warrant that.
You mentioned last week also that a little more right-wing Norwegian individual nominated him the first time. The second time, it was members of the Swedish Parliament. Does that hold any weight to you at all?
I mean, again, circling to the setup of brokering peace deals is objectively a good thing and kind of the foundation of what a Nobel Peace Prize should be about. So while I definitely had a grain of salt from the nomination from the equivalent of an alt-right member in Norway, they would also kind of have to look at who in the Swedish Parliament.
Right, those names are online. I can get those.
But if a majority of various parties in Parliament did it, that would be a bit better. But I mean, itself, Europe has a rising alt-right movement in all of these countries anyways.
Right.
So, still. But again, foundationally, brokering peace deals, regardless of the intention of them, still have beneficial results. So yeah, I would say it's warrant the nomination. Maybe not a guaranteed win.
Gotcha.
So what I would add here is that I think you'd also have to weigh the peace generated by those actions versus other actions of his presidency too, right? Which is the same, a lot of the foundation of why I didn't agree that Obama should get it, because he was, kept the standard of a war hawk president going on his entire political career. So
there's, from the articles I was reading, it like the analysts were saying, or the representatives for the country were saying, our people are tired of war. Like, we're just done. Enough is enough, and we need to find some kind of common ground. So that's good. I hope that continues to go in the right direction. We talked about, if you want to listen to the last podcast, it was we did some climate change talk, we did some free markets talk, and so there's a lot of good stuff in that episode.
We had intros for all of us to get more of our background.
Oh yes, if you want to hear a little bit more about our backgrounds, where we come from educationally, our political influences, why we got into politics and things like that, both Travis, Jake, and or all three of us, Travis, Jake, and myself, all give us a little recap as to who we are. We're not going to do that in every episode, but although it is what's the word I'm looking for? If your ego's blown out of proportion, you just want to talk about yourself the whole time.
Narcissistic.
Narcissistic. Thank you. I couldn't think of the word. One other thing I wanted to add. There's a lightning round question at the end of our show where we have some friends just ask us random questions that we want to answer very quickly. I answered a question last week that I felt I should refine. I didn't like how I answered it. It was, what's the worst part about liberals and liberalism and what's the worst part about libertarianism? I said libertarians are the worst part about libertarianism, but I didn't like my reason because I kind of like just chalked it up as like, oh, we can't agree on anything. There's some that are open border and some that are for border. Like, that's just whatever. When I really thought about it, I was like, you know how I should have answered it? I should have answered when at the nomination, when Gary Johnson got the nomination in the last election cycle, and they had the candidates up on the stage. One of the candidates was like a no-name guy, but like, I mean, maybe in the movement, but not like anyone big. And he's like, I have no chance of winning, so I'm just gonna. And he streaked. He took all his clothes off and ran across the libertarian stage. Like, if you're,
it's truly personal freedom.
Then in the same debate, like Austin Peterson, that is a very well-known name in the Libertarian Party, when asked, should you be allowed to sell heroin to 5-year-olds? And he said no, and the crowd booed him. And so it's like that's what I mean by the libertarian. Like, you're booing that, or you're not. If we're going to be put on CNN and Fox News and want to be taken as a serious party, and the thing they show is a guy, one of our candidates streaking naked across the thing, it would look like a bunch of teenagers pulling pranks at high school senior pranks. Like, I don't know.
I mean, Mickey Mouse is a commonly written write-in candidate for voting, so
that's more I wanted to clarify my answer. Not that we disagree on things. It was more of just like certain people do certain things that don't put us in the best of light.
I mean, you could say the same thing about liberals too.
I mean, so I
think my big thing, I think what would probably be kind of what you're getting at and how I feel about it. I think anyone who takes an absolutist position on your ideology, it's going to have these consequences of like, not being able to rationalize like the real world, like booing, selling heroin to 5-year-olds. That's an absolutist position, That's the ideal over the practical. So a lot of complaints that like normal liberals have about, far left people is that they take these absolutist positions and don't see the reality of it.
Which has circled to the quote unquote circular firing squad of the Liberal Party en masse, which is kind of the worst part of liberalism is sort of that piece where it's either you're not woke enough, you're not, you don't take this absolutist position.
There are tiers of wokeness, and if you're not up here with us, you're one of them. Right. True. So that's basically recap. The cab we reviewed last week was Reserve Gold, and this week Travis picked a wine. Now, Travis, I'll let you bring this in. Oh, by the way, we name our episodes after the wine that we review.
Indeed. So what we have is Gravel Bar. So it is from the Columbia Valley, so Eastern Washington, parts of Oregon. This one is from Washington. I'm a big fan of Northwest cabs. I always feel that they're a little more fuller bodied. You don't have too many sweet ones on it. Last week was also a Northwest cab that was a little on the sweeter side, but
I liked it. Yeah. I like it.
All around a solid cab. So
they gave it a 5 or a 6 or whatever.
I gave it number. I think I gave it a 7 or maybe a 6.
You were a 6 and I said 5, I think.
Yeah.
I'm just like 9. It's the best cab I ever had.
I just don't like sweet wines.
Yeah. But this has hopefully not as dry, but notes of black cherry, black currant. We also have some mocha flavors in it, so more kind of a traditional cab, I would say. Fun fact, for all cabs, established in California, it's an American style wine.
I did not know that, but now I do. All right, so here we go. We're going to try it. We're going to give the scale of 1 to 10 on what we think of this cab. I've never had this before. I'm sorry, you've had this before?
I've not. I picked it because I appreciated it.
Cheers. Oh, over to you. There we go. Cheers. All right, here we go. Definitely drier than last week's. And is that the like mocha that I'm tasting? Maybe if that
like black currant is usually like that sort of almost like bittersweet kind of taste.
It has. If I smack my do that, it tastes like black licorice a little bit as an aftertaste. That's me though. Maybe I'm just going crazy, but
Yeah, I get mostly mocha on the tail end, I think. And
Yeah.
what did you say? Plum was part of it.
Plum is another.
Maybe that's an element of the black licorice you're getting. Like that combination of like sweet and like a little bit more bitter.
see now I'm going to be at like the 5-6 scale.
Yeah,
That's
I mean,
easy.
I will probably still be in that like 6-7 range.
I'm like mid sevens, maybe an 8.
Yeah,
Like this is pretty good, I think.
I would definitely enjoy it. I mean, I do like delicious. But,
I mean, we're going to drink it.
yeah.
It's going to be drank.
I mean,
drunk and
it's gonna take a lot for me to give something a 10 for sure. I mean, we could set that out here right now. Like we're all gonna be like, did you get the last one a 10?
I was like
think it was
8.
an eight-
I was an
an eight or
8.
nine,
I was
yeah.
an 8. I was like, this is 8.
I think this is an 8 for me for sure.
I'm still going to go with the 7 on it. Mostly in the realm of cabs, it's a solid one. It's smooth. I could definitely say like glass 2. You're definitely going to have that sort of dry mouth feel.
Yep. I'm like, I'm sip 2. What are you talking about? Glass 2.
That doesn't bother me though. I've
So it doesn't bother me either. And like I do like drier, more bitter things. I mean, you don't like coffee, which
No,
already
I don't,
shows
no.
that you have no taste.
Coffee's vile, just septic water. All right.
this also is like got a really good nose too though.
It does have a good sort of scent to it. The bouquet on it's nice. I actually did get more of the plums from that.
Right, exactly.
But yeah, so I think in the 5 to 7, 7.5
I
range.
think I'll give it a solid 8.
He's set. That's a locked number. That's an 8.
Yeah, I was high 7s at once. Now I'll do the Anthony Fantano, like high 7, light 8, whatever. Strong 7,
Diet 8.
strong 7, light 8. Yeah, that's
My only concern is the cottonmouths, just because if we're talking, like I need to.
Well, that's the whole point of it.
resalivate
Is you have to
enough.
just keep drinking
Keep
it to
drinking.
address that. That's why I said glass 2. It'll really set it.
It's a trap.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm definitely a solid 7. Would buy again.
absolutely.
Is like an affordable price point. So
That's the thing. What's the price point? Do you want to guess like we did last time?
sure.
What was that? What's going on? What are you doing?
Guess the price
Oh,
point.
guess the price point. Man, if this is more expensive than what I got last week, you guys underguessed mine. I think you spent $14.99.
I think I agree with that. That's what my guess would have been.
Bob, $14.99.
So
Are we doing
Did
price?
we win the showcase? Did we win both?
First of all, do we do price of right rules? Are we doing that?
no, I mean I'll tell you now. At my local package store, it is $16.99.
That's
We're
So
closest without going.
close.
That's
Closest
very
with
good.
that, so that was solid.
By the
and
way,
that-
people on the West Coast, a package store is a place that sells
Sorry about that.
alcohol.
yes, it is.
It's not a UPS or FedEx shipping
Right.
store.
Yeah.
I learned that from my West Coast friends. Like, you want to go to the package store? I'm like, what do you have to send home? I'm like, no, I want booze. What are you talking
Yeah.
about?
Also
So,
known as liquor store.
Liquor
I
stores.
made that
that's-
mistake. So I used to live in Seattle and Tacoma, and I said going to the package store all the time, and people just
Fun fact. Yeah, I think is it New Hampshire where there's a difference. Package stores have beer, liquor stores do not, right?
I think there's some.
beer and wine, I think, and they do not sell liquor because it is regulated
other
by
way-
all state-owned.
Yeah, so the state-owned ones have like the liquor and like they have wine in there too. They don't have any beer there though.
You also, if you leave Connecticut area, people stop calling sandwiches grinders. Just nope, hoagies, heroes, subs, but
Yeah.
not grinder.
Hoagie makes no sense. It's people from Jersey. Sorry, any listeners from Jersey, stop.
That was a wicked solid grinder though.
Yeah, wicked grinder.
Wicked grinder.
So yeah, I think that's
All right, so to get into the topic of tonight's show, I kind of wrote a little bit of a statement, a thesis, a proposition, collection of ideas of something that, as I said, I tend to try to argue the right side of a point, and Travis and Jake are going to take more of the left.
right.
I'm gonna try to be more
right side of
All right, so, sorry, on conservative. If I say right, I mean right side
Yeah.
politically spectrum, and then
I'm gonna try to be a little bit more towards my debatey team time. I'm gonna try to be I'm gonna lean into nihilism just because I think that brings us like I don't want to just be parroting Travis. I want to give something a different spin on it.
I thought it would be fair, 2 of you versus 1 of me. That's how it.
Wow.
I mean, I did.
I'm joking.
I was in
joking.
debate at one point.
I
in my
am
life.
100% joking. Good. Yes, no, you take any stance you want to take from this. So I do want to say for listeners, before I begin, I want to make clear when I say I use the terms like the left or those on the left, that I do not mean Travis or Jake. Like when I use it, it's such a brushstroke term. Just as I hope you wouldn't use alt-right to describe me.
I mean, your views are alternate to the right. Yes, of course.
So yes, the left I'm describing are not my lovely co-hosts here. So this week I joined the many millions of other people that canceled their Netflix account. Because if you're following the news, you can probably guess why. I actually sat and watched the movie Cuties and was pretty disgusted by what I saw. In this film, composed of a dance squad of basically elementary school girls, there's a minor's chest exposed, sexual offers and advancements towards older males, crotch spread, dance routines with mimicry of masturbation during the leg spread, ass up, face down, sexual poses with them mimicking sex with someone who isn't there, twerking of 10-year-old asses. The list goes on and on.
11.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That makes it better. That's issue number one. And Travis, I know you watched it too, because I had mentioned I was going to talk about this, so you kind of did some homework, so I appreciate that. This leads me into number two. With the push from the left, at least from the right's perspective, the push from the left to attempt to normalize transition of gender onto children, labeling them as trans as ages as young as 3 years old, and promoting hormonal introduction at such an age. This to me is a complete violation of the non-aggression principle, and if a child is not capable of consenting to sex, then they are also not capable of consenting to sex changes. This platform is not coming from the conservatives or those on the right. It is 100% found in the leftist camp. You can find movements on social media attempting to push pedophilia as a sexual orientation, to add the letter P to the LGBTQ string of letters. Even testimonials of grown men claiming to push transgenderism even further, claiming to identify a particular age, saying they identify as an 8-year-old boy, therefore justifying their attractions to girls of the same age. And to discriminate or denounce pedophilia as a sexual orientation can get you labeled a bigot and closed-minded by the social justice warrior types, which I know you guys are not a fan of. You don't like social justice warrior types, you don't like the keyboard warriors. The internet left is different than maybe the real world liberals out there. I know that. That's issue number two. Issue number three, with reports from, so there's 4 sections, and then I'm going to ask one big question to you guys. With reports from people like Corey Feldman, Elijah Wood, and Anthony Rapp, who made the claims against Kevin Spacey when he was only 15 years old, saying that a pedophile ring exists within the Hollywood circles, and if Hollywood is a known leftist institution, because I feel it's hard to be a conservative in Hollywood, John Voight gets heat, the left...
Tim Allen.
I was going to say, the left demands Tim Allen and Roseanne be canceled for saying an opinion, but crickets to cancel Empire when Jussie Smollett literally creates a hoax and false statements. So why is the left not denouncing the sexualization of children more? And why are they not vocal from the right's point of view often to be in support of such a movement? Was the conservative right wrong back in the late 90s and early 2000s for pushing against gay marriage? Yes, 100%. Were they wrong to push against gay scout leaders? Yes, 100% they were wrong. But the left to conservatives was wrong within their sales pitch. For I can remember clear as day, the left stating, we just want equality, we want equal marriage. It's not like we're going to push sex onto your kids. Well, just last week, McDonald's and Burger King mascots, Ronald McDonald and the King, 2 characters meant to target and appeal to children, were put in an ad making out in a joint effort with the LGBTQ for a pride ad. And when you have movies like Cuties that call for sex, and then the call for sexual transition of children, number 1 songs called WAP, Wet Ass Pussy from Cardi B, being heard by young girls worldwide with its vulgar sexual...
P-word.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, I mean, we have to
P-word.
keep in mind, the Ben Shapiros of the world who are concerned about that. And,
yes, sorry.
Pour more.
Yeah.
That's me.
With its vulgar, sexual, encouraging lyrics, Cardi B, an artist who's come out and supported the Democratic candidate and has told you to go out and vote for him and has had meetings with him, because if I were Biden, I would cut ties with her ASAP. Imagine a left that gets so offended by Baby It's Cold Outside, but gives WAP by Cardi B a pass. Is it a push of sexuality when the left hosts and supports drag queen kindergarten book reading sessions, 2 of which had to be canceled, one due to a sexual advancement made on a child, and the other due to one of the scantily dressed drag queens' testicles becoming exposed to the children during the book reading? I'm not saying someone in drag can't love a child or be around them. I'm asking, is the push to encourage it exposing children to sexuality too early? How can those on the right not look at all the dominoes falling one after another and say, well, no, you lied. You promised us that you wouldn't push sex onto our kids. And here we are 20 years later, and with a very clear push to normalize sex to children. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm right at the end, guys, I promise. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the radical left of the LGBTQ community has had an increasing aggressive agenda over the last 25 years. It went from, we want tolerance in 1995, we want equality in 2005, bake the damn cake, bigot, or I'll get the government to close your business in 2015, to say my pronouns or go to jail in 2018, to wax my balls or I'll close your salon in 2018, to we're empowering women, whoops, just kidding, let men crush women in women's sports in 2019, to now allow children to get hormone therapy or you're a transphobe in 2020. In conclusion, I know I've said a lot. I'm going to allow my co-hosts plenty of time to respond to all my points, but in conclusion, which of these four is going on? Is Hollywood, pop culture, and pop stars, the media, and the all-inclusivity narrative of the left pushing sex too far to children? Are conservatives overreacting? And there isn't really a problem. Maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe other conservatives are overreacting. Or the third option, not enough is being done to normalize sex, and nothing should really be taboo in this arena. Fourth and final, are parents who make the decision to declare their elementary school and younger age children trans and who put them on hormones to change their physical and sexual makeup guilty of child abuse? I yield the floor to my lovely co-hosts, Travis and Jake.
So I'd like to kind of say there's a lot
there, and I just wanted to tie it all together and say sex being too normalized in society and our kids being exposed to it at risk of, is it bad?
So I'm going to say question. I'll work backwards. Question 4, do I think parents forcing HRT or hormone replacement therapies on minors, is that a form of child abuse? Arguably, yes, due to how consent would work and medical practices for it. Now, that said, if a minor is actively seeking to transition at an earlier age, to pursue HRT, and the parents are on board with that, I think that's a little different than we're gonna start pumping our 3-year-old son with estrogen or LSH.
We have computers. We can look this up.
Yeah. So I think that there's a difference for it. Moving to, do I think we're not normalizing it enough? St. Catherine's in Montreal. Right across from a mall and a large metro station is Club Supersex. It is a 3 or 4 story tall strip club, or gentleman's club, with neon lights of a naked dancing lady in front that spans the entire facade of the building. St. Catherine's is one of the most busiest streets for tourism and just everyday living for it. Mm-hmm. The sex industry is also fully legalized in Montreal to a degree.
By the way, a lot of libertarians are for legalization of prostitution. We're against the banning of porn, things like this. So we're very pro sex when it comes to adults.
But that exposure, it's not as though minors can't go on to St. Catherine's. This is a major street, and it's very much in the public sector. Montreal is the 2nd or 3rd largest city in Canada. So when I think of, are we going... America itself has always had a pseudo-puritanical approach to sex, and we have always been more conservative than most European countries, most other North American countries. So I think everyone
Do you think that stems from our religious foundings?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Problems with that collectively, but I think that so much of it has been ingrained in our legislative system, our social standings, and our understanding of cultural norms that to a general American audience would say like, oh, this is a terrible, terrible thing. So I saw Cuties. Was I uncomfortable through the hour and a half that it was? Yeah, for most of it. Do I think that it's
there were times I literally was watching. I watched on my phone, and every time I just had to go like God damn Netflix! Like
Was it when Ollie's aunt?
spoilers for those of you who haven't seen
yeah.
it.
So when
Turn off now if you want to watch Cuties. Don't watch Cuties.
when the 11-year-old lead's aunt beats her. Was that the point?
Also horrific, but like.
So
when she got...
violence not worse than sexualizing? I think is what you're beating around.
So what I'm actually trying to address with it is that, while the stance
dance-
of cultural relativism aside, because that really, it's easy to say, the French-Senegal relationship and the culture that's there is not the same as an American norm for it.
So it's a
it's
a Muslim girl.
Yep.
And it's
polyamorous or polygamous father. The wedding is a major. You could say there is a plot to it. It's very, very thin. It's not that good. There's talking about how this young girl is trying to navigate sexuality, tradition with a strict Muslim lifestyle.
The director came out in a statement and said it's meant to empower girls and women. I had difficulty seeing that message.
So, empowerment itself is always a nuanced sort of piece, especially as our identity politics go as two whites. Forgive me for presuming, but you're three white cis male people trying to explain and say, like, yeah, will I ever be able to understand 100% what an 11-year-old Senegalese
yes.
in France is dealing with? No, not at all. And it's very easy for me to objectively say, or subjectively say, like, yeah, this is wrong. I think
it's
by
objective truth that this is wrong. Why is it subjective? That's
because I go back to the piece of a cannibal and a Catholic talk to each other and say which one has the correct way to honor their dead. Like, there isn't really the cultural norm and the social compact that Americans prescribe to is not the same as the one that French immigrants, or especially in nations where the dominant culture in Senegal is very different from the dominant culture in France. So navigating these little pockets of these cultures in the other countries is something that American audiences can't fully grasp. Right. That said...
So was Netflix wrong to pick this up?
No.
You think it was fine? They lost a lot of money. Their stock went down. They got cancellations
it's an award-winning film. It is one...
But that would be the right's argument. It's like, it's an award-winning film in an institution that runs left, that is... there's these pedophile rings in Hollywood. They would tinfoil hat and draw the connections to say, well, here's why,
Yeah, and with that in mind, the right, how many closeted politicians on the right lost their seats because it was discovered that they were found in a hotel room with a young boy?
Absolutely. Or even just the Catholic priests.
Absolutely.
100%. I just think it's wrong across the board. I think this is something that might break the barriers of left and right, and I would hope that we can come together and say no.
Well, I think you're colluding something too, though, because the media presentation of sex does not equal sexual abuse against a minor. So, and there's been a lot of research about psychology, right? That has talked about how, and this is something maybe I want you guys to respond to in conjunction with this. How the normalization of sex leads to less sexual violence, because it removes the taboo of it, the stigma. Right, exactly. Certainly, I'm not advocating for the sexual liberty for non-minors to have sex, or non-minors to have sex with minors, adults to have sex with minors. That's not what I'm saying. I'm more saying that allowing sex to exist in the media has the potential of removing that mystique to it, and perhaps inviting a healthier culture around sex in our country, sort of like how Amsterdam has, essentially.
So absolutely. Circling back quickly, I don't think the point of the movie is to normalize this dance troupe as appropriate behavior for it. I think it's
I
to
agree.
navigate, it's to empower women to navigate the space between tradition and when I don't want to say like liberalism in the sense of political leanings, but just sort of a more free way to express yourself.
Yes. I can see that point. But-
Do I think that 11-year-olds should be, in essence, soliciting sex from 14-year-olds? Definitely not. Older men? Absolutely not. So,
Because when I turned this on, I said, you know what? I thought in my head. So there's a movie for you young kids out there that don't know this movie. There's a movie called Donnie Darko, and in the movie Donnie Darko, there's a dance troupe of young girls called Sparkle Motion. It's Donnie Darko's younger sister who's part of Sparkle Motion, and that dance scene. It's one scene in the movie. It's in the middle of it, and they're like going to the championships to win. They're definitely more covered than the girls in Cuties. Cuties shows a lot more skin than the girls in Sparkle Motion did. There are other
came
movies
out like 30 years ago.
This also
years ago.
this also came out a long time ago. Cuties would not have flown at that time. But like even their dance moves then weren't super sexual. Like they kind of were, but they were not what you see in Cuties. So I walked in thinking like, oh, it's just gonna be a bunch of Sparkle Motion type stuff, and people are overreacting maybe. And that's why I really wanted to get into it. And I'm like, oh no, like when she just takes her clothes off for the guy, when she rips her pants down and takes the photos of her junk, and like I'm like, this is like in the final dance scene where they're just like, to me, I was like,
the final dance scene where the main character cries, realizes this isn't what she wants, and then runs to go back with her family.
No, but like the actual dancing, the actual movements in general, like even not even just the main character, but there's 4 other girls there that are doing the same thing that. I don't know.
It
does not. I do not. I believe that if there is a pedophile out there that does not have access to actual child porn, that this would suit him to get off.
I mean, even in Donnie Darko, Swayze had a kiddie porn dungeon.
Yes, that's
so
true.
It continued through.
That's true.
With this film, again, like dance hall is a thing. Dance hall is a lot of like daggering, other things in place, where they would not, like we would sit there and be like, no, this is terrible in America. Oh my God, these people are having sex on the dance floor. And it's like, yeah, well, that's normal in other cultures for it. Again, are there questions to be raised about how young should someone be doing this? Absolutely. Do I think 11-year-olds should be sexually active? No, not really. Do I think that we should have an open conversation about that? Yeah. Because the moment we say don't have sex...
abstinence is the... No, that's the worst.
But that is the American norm. I mean, sex ed for me in high school was don't have sex in the missionary position, don't have sex standing up, don't have sex in the shower. Now here, everyone grab these condoms.
Yeah.
Shout out Mean Girls. But with it, it's just an entire setup that the American approach to sex, I think, is somewhere in the 1800s. We've come a little way from where we started with our puritanical roots of where is she and only for the sake of procreation. I don't think we're where the rest of the Western world is. I mean, we have cuddle cafes in Japan. We have maid cafes. We've got a fully legalized red light industry in Amsterdam. We have, even in Canada, Montreal is very known for its sexual proclivity and the openness and normalization of sex.
Japan has its own issues with sex, though.
We got Vegas.
Certainly, there's a lot of sexual assault and other
we got Vegas.
unhealthy setups for it.
And also, like,
we do have Vegas with card girls and like the people getting stuff for it.
There's issues in Japan with like the inequality of gender and they're having a population problem because men in Japan just refuse to like be with a strong woman, and strong women are on the rise there, you know.
Yeah.
So that's a cultural thing
setup.
affecting their numbers.
Sure.
Yeah. So with that in mind, and it's funny you bring up Vegas. What is Vegas's nickname?
Sin City.
So America has always taken this position of, sex is bad because God knows what you're doing. Again, I do think a lot of the legislation and the cultural backlash to it is very religious driven. So the real question is, do I think, or to go to your kind of initial question for it, do I think that like Netflix has warranted this backlash? No. With that said, it's a private company and all corporations' goals are to make money, so catering to your audience is fine. Netflix has done quite a lot of limiting films and content based off of geographic location. Do I think they gambled with Cuties being received well in the US? Yeah. Did they lose that? Yeah. Do I think that the movie should never have been made? Absolutely not. The movie should be made. And by us having this discussion, while the talking heads on Fox or CNN are having this discussion, it really is something like progress is only ever made through.
Sorry, I don't continue. Sorry, I'll finish after you finish your thought.
Yeah, progress is only made on topics like these and cultural positions through discomfort. I mean, suffragettes were marching in the streets, and men were like, "Go back to the kitchen. You don't belong here," and it made them uncomfortable to see a strong female coming forward. As Jake brought up with Japan, Japanese culture now is not responding well to the increase or the general rise of strong, independent females. So
just made me think of South Park, strong woman.
So that said, I think we should have more of this, and the only way to reduce the sort of immediate visceral reaction is to kind of normalize these pieces. Again, as Jake brought up, normalizing a media representation of something is not advocating for it to happen. It is simply acknowledging that this shit does happen.
Right. I don't want any of the listeners to think, or you guys think, that I'm anti-art, because this is a film. It's still film, and it's, there's back in the day there was provocative paintings, and this would have been like, oh my god,
Mapplethorpe was a prominent photographer, and it was mostly of prostitutes and gay men in rather lewd positions.
Fornicating positions.
Not always fornicating, but that was viewed as, distasteful. It was so bad. Now, nearly everyone's like, these are phenomenal pieces of art. So
right.
It's like,
so I don't want to. I understand that it's a film and it's art, and there's something to be said about that.
I want to toss in here too. Okay.
Go ahead.
I haven't seen the film, obviously, so I'm speaking sort of towards your broader point. Because you brought in WAP, for example, by Cardi B.
Sure.
I'm a hip hop fan, a very big hip hop fan actually, and I think
are you? I think
I largely am not, actually.
New rap and hip hop, I'm not, but the class I like rap and hip hop, and I respect it as an art.
I follow it currently too, but I'm mostly underground stuff. I think WAP is a terrible song, but not because of its.
I mean, it's just in general.
Cardi B supported Bernie Sanders, so she's got like a step up for me on that.
It's just not a. Just not a good song.
The cow.
From an art perspective, from an art perspective.
Yeah.
But do I think that there should be any sort of censorship around her making that song? Absolutely not.
No.
You said something to the effect of this is something that children listen to. That's not her fault. That's
It's the parents' fault. I 100%.
But that in turn just validates the parents' outrage.
But here's the deal: first of all, my parents didn't watch me watching South Park. I watched a lot of South Park.
When you prohibit something, you make it
right. So there's no 12 or 13-year-old alive in America that hasn't heard this song. They have access to YouTube. They are over their friend's house and they listen to it.
Sure,
whether their parents want them doing it or not. So they got exposed to it.
Sure,
and
of course.
But that's true. Is Cardi B, who's saying she's a feminist and liberating in this way? Is she doing these young girls a favor by saying this is a good way to act, this is a good way to talk, this is a good way to speak, this is a good way to view sex and view your partner? This is good,
was Madonna doing the same in the 80s?
At a far drastically softer level.
But for the time, it was equally as seen as provocative.
Oh,
it was
her burning crosses and making out with a black priest and that was like losing your mind.
So it's difficult to judge.
But let's make two very realistic. Cardi B is no Madonna. Madonna is a.
Some people would disagree. I agree with you to some extent, only because
in terms of talent,
significance, and influence,
significance in pop culture.
I mean, she's very significant. Unfortunately, I think her influence on hip hop as a medium is not good, because it sort of distills it down to she from a production level. Just to get not get too nerdy on this, but from a production level, she uses a lot of cheap tricks to get people to like her music. Essentially,
We're saying auto-tune is a trick.
Most pop music is kind of bad.
It's there
to be sold and be consumed.
But she's the antithesis of your Kanye West. We have other problems with Kanye West, of course, but she's the antithesis of Kanye West when he was at his peak, because he used pop as a medium to deepen pop. Anybody pop music is not negative by itself. people who use pop as a medium to deepen it, to give pop a texture. Those are the people like your David Bowies, your Kanye Wests, your Madonnas, people who add texture to pop music, your Princes, whoever you want to like point to as being these great, like literally like great pop artists. They use pop to make art. It's not.
Do you think if you composed a list of top 100 pop artists of all time, Cardi B makes the list?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, okay.
Surprise. She does.
No, that's records sold. That's digital singles sold. I'm talking like if you were to compose if you were to poll America or the world.
Okay, if you're asking me, fuck America. If you're asking
we have
me,
to get the consensus of the general public.
I do want to clarify that both Madonna and Cardi B are certified. They have made enough record sales to reach a point. Madonna's career is 4 times as long, or 4 times as.
She's had more time.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, how about this? In the same.
Do I think Cardi B is a good musician or artist? Not really, but I understand that. I would say the same about most pop stars.
But I would. Yes, about most. But there's okay.
But
So
like
the Madonna of our day is Lady Gaga.
But you're like Abbas of the world, David Bowies.
Yeah,
would you agree with that?
These are literally legitimately great artists who use pop as a medium. That's what I'm saying.
Yes. Would you agree that Lady Gaga is the Madonna of our time?
To the most part, it'll be very different now.
And a brushstroke. Lady Gaga's done more for pop and art and music than I think Cardi B will ever do in her career.
If you're trying to like broad brush it, sure. I think
that's all I do, baby.
I don't think.
I'm just a broad brushstroke kind of guy.
From a significance point of view, I don't know if I agree.
Generalizations.
Because the part of her career that was most popularly received was her closely mimicking Madonna. Now, do I think I think she's probably a better artist than Madonna, from a skill perspective.
I would actually agree with you.
She's classically trained.
Many pop stars owe their entire careers to Lady Gaga.
Sure, absolutely.
She was songwriting most of it.
But Lady Gaga absolutely owes her career to Madonna as well. No question about it.
Yeah.
Like Madonna was the prototype from which she started her career on. Has she gone away from that? Absolutely. Is she important? Absolutely.
But then people would say, I know she's not really a musician artist, but like Madonna may have pulled off of Marilyn Monroe in the back. There's always someone generations earlier.
Style and like. Madonna owes a lot to the, Madonna didn't produce her own music, so obviously she owes a lot to her producers. Or, Madonna owes a lot to David Bowie. There's always someone you can owe something to for sure.
But to the initial question though,
David Bowie owes a lot to the Beatles.
Fair.
So, with Cardi B, do you think that she is empowering, women, young girls with this? Again, it circles back to that nuance of what is empowerment. The left is commonly stating that sex is a weapon, a unit of power. It is something that can be flexed.
Is it meant to fight the patriarchy, is what you're saying?
And I think Cardi B is doing a good job at stating, we no longer need women to be the quiet, subservient, go back in the kitchen like they were in the 50s.
You don't need to when you have people like Michelle Obama. When you have people that made the right decisions and didn't do it through, as you said, cheap tricks in their music and vulgar, lazy words, and over-sexualizing themselves to get attention. You can do it through. I'm trying to think of just a general but scientific women in science, women in academia.
Is it not another means to accomplish it? So like Elvis Presley sold sex appeal. He wasn't that good of a musician.
Whoa.
Said it. Mic drop.
Wow. Michael
Jackson also sold sex,
and
he was a very talented musician, troubled later on and also early too. But you have quote unquote entertainers selling sex because in America, while we have sex as this taboo topic for our children, we consume it like nothing else. So the fact that Cardi B sells sex is really only making her more successful.
But is she qualified, if we are acknowledging that she sells sex, is she qualified to therefore say to the younger generation, hey, go vote Joe Biden, orange man bad? Don't, you don't know, you're talking about there's hoes in this house.
Clint Eastwood spoke to an empty chair at the Republican National Convention
And also,
saying,
isn't
"Where are
it,
you, Mr. Obama?"
isn't it
So,
antithetical
like,
to your libertarian views to say that she shouldn't be able to use her voice the way she wants
Oh,
to?
100% she should. I'm saying that, but I can still ask the question, are there cultural ramifications for doing so? She should 100% have the freedom to do it. 100%.
I mean, anyone who has a platform that large,
Yeah.
no matter what they do, has a cultural ramification. There's no question about it.
I mean, you have people rallying around Kanye West to run for president,
And is the
solely to swipe votes from Joe Biden.
Right.
His campaign is staffed by like Republican operatives trying to push him on the ballot. I don't think he's actually going to be on any ballots.
He's I don't know if you guys have been paying attention. We'll get to current events later, but he's hard tilted away from president. Now he's talking about. I think his current rants are actually good because he's talking about the music industry and how fucking toxic it is. But we'll talk about that in a little bit.
For sure.
So that's, like I said, when it comes to that, I think Cardi B should have the freedom to say whatever she wants and make any kind of music she wants, and no government or no anything should censor her or force it. 100% on board with that.
And you have every right
But-
not to listen.
You're right, I do. But if I have the best way to word this. I think it's still valid to ask the question: is what she's doing having a positive effect culturally for the nation in the world, or a negative effect nation in the world? And if so, should that be brought to light and discussed? I think it's probably bringing a negative in the long run. She still can be an artist and she still can make art. I just think it's
I don't think
pushing the wrong message to children, and I sound so like it's the video games that are causing the school
sound
shootings.
Like Joe Lieberman
I don't
talking
know
about how Doom was Columbine is directly caused by Doom, Rammstein, and Pantera. Or no, Marilyn Manson. Sorry, I don't know how I got those two confused. Some nothing alike.
I just think back when I was a kid, there was no 10-year-old or 11-year-old who would even have said the words "wet ass pussy."
There were 10-year-olds and 11-year-olds being kidnapped and then like raped and murdered when you were that young.
I understand that there's
this.
reality of badness in the world. I'm talking
Yeah.
like girls I went to school with. There wasn't even on the radar of saying those words. Now it would.
Here's the thing. I don't want to say this word on a podcast, so I'm not going to, but I'll refer to it. We weren't saying pussy, but we were saying the F word.
It's true. There were a lot of homophobic slurs.
When we were
other
kids,
things.
homophobia was normalized. So it's a different world.
See, I take the Bill Burr approach.
I would take pussy over that word every day of the week. That's what I'm trying to say.
So even I actually no.
See,
I will say that,
South Park.
Children were saying pussy, but they were using it in more of a demeaning
To talk about the
offensive way.
same culture of people.
Yeah,
Right.
to say like, don't be a pussy.
You're being feminine. You're being
Yeah, so we were.
But I
used to,
take
like,
the South Park and Bill
almost-
Burr approach to the F word, the homophobic slur F word, in case no one knows what we're talking about. That it wasn't ever not once meant to mean homosexual when you used it. It was a sense to.
not when I was a kid.
So sorry for cutting you off on it, but I don't think it was used to like say you are being a homosexual.
You like men. It was never that.
It was always you are effeminate and you are acting
You're
as
weak
though
and
you are
effeminate.
weak and less than me.
Like
You
a
are less-
homosexual.
Because again,
Right.
America so when we're talking about our childhoods, talking 90s,
These.
early 2000s.
Correct.
So there were a lot of problems. I mean, I think now people on the left would say we had this heteronormalization of the cisgendered approach to things, and any deviance to it was wrong, immoral, bad, what have you. So I mean, slut shaming was a huge thing at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So like we weren't saying
It still is.
Absolutely, yeah. We haven't solved sexual freedom for people.
Are we
yet.
not slut shaming Cardi B right now by talking?
I'm not. I just don't think she's a
Not-
good
not
musician.
us.
regardless.
No, she's just
and I do generally agree with her policies because fuck yeah, Bernie Sanders.
I also think.
What policy? Oh,
Is is there not also this element as the homosexual community has to some degree reclaimed the word that we're talking about and not saying on a stream because we're not idiots? Is not her saying wet ass pussy in a song reclaiming the word pussy from being, oh, you're weak, inferior, to now being, oh, the pussy is a word of strength, not a word of weakness now. When I say when they're saying, because when we said pussy when we were 11, we're saying you suck, you're less, you're like a woman.
She's singing about deriving immense pleasure from having her pussy pounded by a hard cock, and then a 12-year-old's like, "Oh, I want to feel this pleasure. I mean, that has to go through somebody's mind.
I mean, I don't think you
like
find
what,
a 12-year-old who's capable of doing that.
No, but it's like now they're. I don't know. Maybe I'm being more conservative on this than I thought I was.
This feels like you're being more conservative than other issues you've been on, I would say. Yeah. To me,
probably.
So I think to me, it's the entire discussion is very reminiscent about that sort of high school sex ed stuff.
Yeah.
We all were victims of the abstinence-only sex ed policies. Like that was what was normal. I would be very interested in seeing what is actually being taught now, if, heaven forbid, it's actually anything's being taught. Because I can tell you right now, as a high schooler, late middle schooler, I had no fucking idea about like sex outside of what was in porn, and like.
Remember when you said this probably happened to you too. Remember when you used to use the word masturbate as an insult, like, oh, he masturbates, he's masturbating, he's a masturbator. That for some reason in my grade was like an insult. And it was like nowadays, I'm like, that's insane that was an insult. That every fucking person in the world masturbates.
And if they're not, they're thinking about other people masturbating.
Almost without exception, you know.
Yeah. I never heard that one.
I definitely remember hearing like you've got hair on the back of your hands, you definitely jerk off.
Oh, like the weird, yeah.
Yeah, so like that, and Jake, it's an interesting position too, that like Americans have been shaming sex. I mean, we still do it. And like those are just conversations and like discussions that you don't really have a lot internationally, at least not in more Western liberal countries. Bringing it back to the root question on it, do I still think 11-year-olds should be soliciting sex from older men? No. And do I think pedophiles should be protected under a more inclusive banner? No.
Do I think pedophilia is a mental illness? Yes.
Do I think if you're a parent, you let your kid listen to Cardi B or listen to WAP, you're a bad parent? Yes.
Well, I mean, that's because you just have no good music taste.
Actually,
you being the parent.
Here's something I want to say to you, Tanner, and I want to hear your response directly on this, because I'm going back to a thought we had earlier, and I was trying to.
There's a lot flying around.
Feel my feelings out on this a little bit.
Sure.
So you're right. You're totally right. A parent has no capacity to 100% police the media content.
I think it's just impossible today with technology. Not just impossible.
Sure, absolutely. But do they have a responsibility to contextualize it? That's what I would. That's my perspective.
A good parent will, I think, at the end of the day, contextually. Like, well, here is why. So there's an example in my head that I'm trying to.
I think no matter what their exposure to media, I mean, just in lieu of like really extreme media, the parent's role isn't to control their child as much as to give them the ability to process the world around them.
Right. So I'll give you an example of, when I went to school, we were all probably part of the DARE program. And I don't know do they even run the DARE program anymore?
I would hope not. It was a waste of money.
It's bad and just yielded zero results, and it made kids
more saying that government programs was a waste of money. DARE.
Hooray.
DARE
we did it, folks. It only took one episode in, but we got them to say it. So they tried to scare you into drugs and weed was bad and this stuff. And then, when I go...
Strangers will offer you drugs on every street corner.
I've yet to been offered candy that's laced with...
Where's all this fucking free drugs there? I've been waiting for it.
No free drugs. Or the best is at Halloween, your kid's candy might be laced with marijuana. First of all, no one's giving up their weed to give it away for free.
No one is dosing candy and giving it to children either.
I want to say this
Acid
right now.
is expensive.
If any viewer wants to send us free drugs, I will gladly take them.
At a P.O. box, which no one is tied to, so it's okay.
Right.
Just don't make it with ingredients from under the sink.
Yeah,
sure.
Please. True. Crocodile, quick PSA. Crocodile is the dumbest fucking thing ever. And if you're unaware of what crocodile is, it is a Slavic drug that's like battery acid, gasoline. It's kind of like a really bad discount version of meth that you inject in yourself, and your skin undergoes.
By the way, left right cab in no way, shape, or form suggests or supports or encourages this stuff. I don't know why my co-host Travis knows all this information.
Clearly,
that's true.
None of us have ever taken
your skin
any illicit
undergoes
drugs.
necrosis, and it just it kills you. And arguably, drugs can kill you over time, sure.
Drugs are
but
bad.
This will just kill you.
So answer to your actual question. So they scare you, drugs are bad, blah, blah, blah. And so when I went to my father and would say things like, hey, what's up with, you ever smoke weed, or is weed bad? Or, the cop at school said that in the DARE program that you should stay away from weed. And he did what I think the good parent should do, is contextualize it. Mm-hmm. It's like, would I prefer you to be smoking weed? No. I would rather you be spending that time learning guitar, learning a skill, learning a hobby. I think your time would be better spent doing that than sitting getting high. Is it going to kill you, or is it what was one of the claims, funding terrorism at one point?
Yes. Buying marijuana funds terror.
No, none of this will happen. And but I think you're smarter and smart enough to spend your time doing better things that will progress you as a human than maybe weed. Now, at the end of the day, I've smoked weed, so it doesn't matter.
Learning guitar is the gateway drug to smoking weed.
That's true. And learning guitar and joining bands got me more weed than if I just never picked up the guitar in the first place and I stuck with learning magic tricks.
Yes, the good old French drop.
You got both more weed and more vagina, right?
That's true. That's true.
Magic tricks are not, only for Steve.
First off,
only
it's not
for
a trick.
Steve.
It's an illusion.
The only person who I can know in history has ever used magic trick to actually increase their female game is Steve Gurley, who you don't know him.
I do not.
But
shout out to Steve.
Hey, Steve, if you're not watching, which I know you're not. Yeah, so but generally speaking, the stereotype is absolutely magic tricks aren't going to fucking get you anywhere with that.
I know. I 100% know. I used to do it all the time in high school. Like, I knew I was obsessed with David Blaine, and I was obsessed with all the street magic, like close-up magic, and I used to do so much. And then but like in the cafeteria, all the girls sat around, like a guy, this kid named Brian, who had the acoustic guitar, and they all sat around.
Here's one to roll.
And I was like, or at the parties we go to, they'd flock to him like, so that's what the women are attracted to. So then I picked up guitar, and then it ended up, the hobby that my dad wanted me to do to avoid drugs exposed me to more marijuana and more sex, because of of what the.
I mean, it is sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
So we are at an hour now, actually. I didn't want to interrupt before, but it feels like this is getting to a natural breaking point. I'm going to mute the mics. I'm going to toss up a graphic. If we had sponsors or something, this would be a good place to put that kind of stuff, but obviously we don't. So if you want to sponsor us, hit us up at, do you have an email yet?
Yeah, you can email us at leftrightcab@gmail.com.
Beautiful.
You can message us on Facebook. You can
on Twitch.
On Twitch, Twitter. All of it's leftrightcab. And we'll do everything we can to get back to you.
We will put your logo wherever the hell you want.
The logo, we'll give you shout outs.
We will get rid of our faces. We will deep fake our faces with your logo.
Someone's logo just right on my face, right on my glasses.
And if you have good Cabernets to suggest, we will always
send us cabs. We will
cabs.
take your cabs. I'll take your other alcohol too, but cab is definitely is the one we're going for this.
All right, so good time for a break, and we'll be back.
Yep.
Excellent.
Awesome.
And welcome back to Left Right Cab. Just took a little break. First part of the show talked a lot about sex in culture and if it's having a negative effect on children. If it's not doing anything, and the right is something that the right's overreacting. So now Travis has a topic to discuss and some questions to ask us. And wow, good job, Travis. You had one job, and it was to
Fucking golf.
Mute your laptops.
Seemingly.
mute laptops, mute your phones.
Yeah. So, thank you, Tanner. And those who don't know of other pop culture things, I think the Masters or PGA stuff is going on.
U.S. Open.
U.S. Open. Okay, that was the ad.
I just got recently into golf, and I'm doing like the most like white middle-aged things ever. I'm getting into golf. I'm collecting watches. Like, it's bad.
Oof.
I have a podcast where we drink wine.
That's true. So I did want to bring something a little more localized, so a more topical sort of element. And very recently, I think it was either a week ago or in between last week's episode and this, Bob Woodward, who was a famed Watergate correspondent, he, for those who don't know, he broke the story of the wiretapping of the DNC for Watergate, which is what then led to Nixon being impeached. He's done several books and other articles since then. He is still relevant, despite being very ancient. And most recently, he released the certain audio clips from his latest book, Rage, which is about the Trump presidency. And this is the first book that he's released that actually has direct interviews from President Trump. The first book he put out, which its name escapes me for it, was criticized because he didn't interview Trump for it. It was mostly his advisors and former staffers who provided commentary about the White House and sort of the odds and ends, the goings on for it.
All the operations and such.
Yep, this one is still that, but also includes dialogue conversations with Trump. And one of the major headlines that came out of it was globally, but also in America right now, COVID is, still going on. The U.S. has not done a good job responding to it. And part of the interviews that Woodward had with Trump included an admission that not only did President Trump actively know that the coronavirus and the impact to the U.S. would be far worse than what he was saying, but his intention on doing so was to not introduce a panic. So ultimately, if we keep the American populace misinformed about it, they won't freak out. We won't have crippling economic standards, which happened anyways. So I think my question to Jake and Tanner is really, we all can generally assume that this was known, that we knew that the Trump administration and his staffers were downplaying the risk of COVID, just by how the American response was based on the global response. But the real crux of my question to you guys is based on whether or not the role of the president is to keep a populace complacent and non-rioting, which is exactly what's going on in America right now, but to keep calm, or to keep the population informed. As a quick sort of libertarian jab, an informed population is a key and vital element to democracy continuing. So
Right.
Should I clarify? Are you asking?
So my question for the two of you is, was Trump valid in his approach of downplay the risk of the coronavirus continuously in the interest of public safety? Was that the correct decision? Or should he have stated, this is bad, we need to do something about it? Or alternatively, as a third sort of option, should he have continue to downplay it, but actively push for tried and true programs and policies in place, i.e., don't downplay a mask. Say, yeah, you could very easily say, oh no, it's not that bad, but wear a mask when you go out. And he did not. He downplayed that as well.
I have a question for you too. Back to what you were positing on a more macro level. Are you asking, does the president have a response to keep us informed? Or are you asking more directly, does the president have a response to tell us the truth? I think those are two different things.
Sure. Yeah, I can get on board with that.
I would say to keep us informed, because if the role of the president was to tell us the truth, it would be like Trump stating we have a brand new nuclear defense system, which he did to a civilian releasing top secret information.
See, I agree with you. That's what I'm trying to get at.
So I would say, is the role of a president to boil it down as a very binary piece, keep peace and stability, or keep a population informed, provided that the two cannot coincide with one another.
Okay, so I have a couple of answers. First, I'm going to quote. I hope I say his name right. Epictetus, philosopher. Regardless, Greek. Yeah. And so I quote him in my book, and he says a phrase that only the educated are free.
Wait a second. Did you write a book?
I did.
Oh, wow.
Is this plug time?
It might just be.
My former book, The Young Libertarian, and my new book, The Left is Gauche. This is bad. No, you asked a generous question. Here I am plugging my own stuff. I'm sorry.
Terrible.
Out this winter. So, but yeah, only the educated are free. So I agree with you with keeping us informed. I have two kind of counter questions to this question then. What percentage of Americans are even informed or even care to be informed? Because, for example, a mutual friend of all of ours, I had to tell him yesterday that I brought up Trump getting the Nobel Peace Prize nominations and that he did some crazy peace stuff in the Middle East, and he was just like, nope. He's completely unplugged from politics. So there has to be a percentage of us who, the percentage of the population, you're saying you want to have a population that's informed, a percentage of them are just not going to be informed at their own volition and will. They're just not going to tune in. So what percentage do you think that is?
I would actually expand that further to say we have a startling amount of people who are not engaged with the political process in the U.S. I think average voter turnout is like 30%.
Sure. Yeah.
On a good year.
On an Obama year?
On one cycle of the Obama year.
Yeah.
So voting in America is already a serious problem, and the lack of engagement is an underlying issue to that. But we also have a very startling amount of people in the U.S. who actively seek misinformation because it self-validates their views. It happens on the left, happens on the right. You see it with echo chambers existing. Throwback to last week of people who are like, I disagree with this, so I'm going to remove you from my sphere of influence. It's part of cancel culture. So that honestly compounds that issue and makes it far worse. Because not only do you have the people who are actively disengaged and don't want to be informed, you have the people who have no intention of ever wanting to change their position or to be informed from it. I will rule those people into the statement of what's the percentage of people who are not informed? And probably like 65% of Americans.
Okay, so then the question becomes,
are we actually free?
Well, okay, no, not so much that. That's but if we know that 65% of the nation is probably not informed or not going to care, regardless, what harm? Sure, downplay it or don't tell us anything at all. I think the president's job, maybe in the president's handbook of things you must do as president, number one might be downplay crises. So my evidence is Trump downplaying this. Then you can go back further to Bush when they whispered in his ear, the second tower fell, and he just sat there and continued reading to the children and downplayed it and said, there's no emergency, there's no alarm. And then you can go back. Now this is where I put my tinfoil hat on, and we were talking about this in the break, where if UFOs crashed here in Roswell, downplay it. It was
I
swamp
believe
gas.
you mean when they did.
When they did, the government's role was deny, downplay. It was a weather balloon. It was swamp gas. It was anything that except a vehicle off-world. And again, tinfoil hat. But that's just evidence of downplay. So I think it's going to happen. I think it's out of our hands. I think it's just something that comes with the job.
So
Much like if someone's holding someone hostage and the cop has the gun on them and they say, hey, try to talk the guy down. Don't threaten him.
De-escalation is different.
But I think that's the job. That's rule number one. That's what you do first is try to de-escalate.
So I would
I
would typically agree and say, like, yeah, you don't want to incite panic, you don't want to incite riots, and you want to maintain some degree of stability. With Trump's approach to this, it was actively to de-incentivize any security or safety measures. Because regardless of if you are informed or engaged with the political sphere, the coronavirus will still kill you. That's why to this day, I don't understand why
If you're 60 years and older and have pre-existing
conditions, or if you are under the age of 5 and have no established immune system. Again, we have studies coming out saying that upwards of 30 to 40% of COVID carriers are asymptomatic.
Yeah.
So taking that in consideration, it's not a matter of if you will get sick and die. It's if you serve as a vector to one of those more vulnerable populations, which even running the political calculus with it, Trump's most reliable voting bloc is the elderly. They're the ones most at risk of dying from this. Why would you not want to protect? Like, to me, it just doesn't make sense that, yes, it's very easy to say, yes, we have a pandemic. Please wear masks, but we'll get through this. You can navigate that. Obama did with H1N1. I think that was him, or it was DWD.
H1N1. That's Obama, 100%.
And it was, we're going to institute more stable sanitation procedures. We're going to implement more regulation, which
In the defense of anyone dealing with COVID, and we're obviously in the bottom tier of countries doing it right now, at least Western countries.
Should we be wearing masks?
I thought about this too. I think it would only be for optics because we obviously have like a.
We've all made out. Like,
yeah, exactly.
with each other.
Right.
So I want to quickly talk and shamelessly plug quarantine pods and groups of. You can still be social in a very defined amount of space with people for it.
Sure, certainly, if we were trying to do for the optics of it, especially Travis and I as liberals, we would be wearing masks. I think it'd be dishonest to do that because we're around each other otherwise without masks on. So that said, like
Please
you said,
wear a mask in public.
Wear a mask in public.
Yes, I'm not anti-mask. I'm not like with those crazy.
Wear a mask. Wear a mask even in groups of 10 or whatever. Only in really defined spaces where you have a lot of contact with somebody and you have reliability. You can rely on that person to not be, not be unreliable with their mask usage elsewhere. That's the only situation where I feel like this is even acceptable at all.
Right,
for sure. That's it.
The mask is the condom of the face.
Right.
I believe they have face mouth condoms as well. So dental dams, I believe, is what they're called.
They are.
Yeah. So backtracking a little to that.
Sorry to derail that.
It's very easy to all risk mitigation plans and programs. Yes, not so much deny as downplay. So yes, you can say, this isn't really that big of an issue. However, we are going to take these preventative measures to ensure that we get through this safer. That was it. That's all Trump needed to say. You know what? Even when he said masks aren't mandatory.
Here's my counter argument. Sorry, finish your sentence. I apologize.
So when you have the policies coming forward, Georgia was a great example of this. Atlanta instituted a mask requirement in the city. The governor, who is a Republican, struck it down. He requested that it was raised to the state Supreme Court, which is also heavily conservative. They struck it down as well, said it was unconstitutional. Atlanta then boomed with COVID cases. Mm-hmm. Oklahoma, or either Oklahoma City or Tulsa, wherever the Trump rally was, the mayor was like, "Oh,
The one
yeah, no,
that
have
the
it
one that
here."
killed Herman Cain.
Yes. I don't even want to say R.I.P. Herman Cain. Death of anyone is very sad.
I do. I agree. Even if I don't agree with it politically, I don't want anyone to die.
Yeah. So
Unless you want to.
that's true.
That's my libertarian part of that shit. If you want to kill yourself, go ahead. But
No one
think
chose
we're
this
all-
life. You should have the right to end it.
absolutely.
How you want as well.
No.
And with no outside like opinion on it, honestly.
No, I mean, you mean legally, like in a legal sense?
Legally, or yeah, well, of course, like your loved ones don't want you to die.
Well, there's this
Sure.
was the case of the state. If I can remember this, Terry Shivo.
Terry
yeah.
Shivo.
Terry Shivo. This is me dating. This is a good. That's a great.
Ohio, I think?
My memory's shit. In fact, I remembered Terry Shivo.
Florida.
This woman who was in a
thought it was Ohio,
vegetative
but-
state.
Was
Florida.
it? Was it Florida? I was pretty
Florida.
sure.
And the state literally said, "No, you can't kill her." They came like the fact that
Wasn't
the
in
state
her
came-
will, right? Didn't she have a will that stated that she wanted that?
She wanted it.
Yeah.
And the state said no, and it's like, what you have? You're telling me you're a state that's pro-life, but you're going to be anti-death? Like,
Yeah, it was Florida.
I'll say right here on this podcast, if you find me in a vegetative state, please let me go.
yeah,
Please.
yeah. No, my girlfriend had to make the hard decision with her father, and she knew that that's not how he wanted to just live, hooked to machines.
Sure.
And so she made the tough decision to pull the plug, and it was one of the hardest things she ever had to do.
I'm sorry
No.
to refer to that and it being so close, but I still agree
No,
with
you're
that
right.
decision.
No, it's right. I think she would take the same path. I would take it.
It is the death with dignity kind of movement that's going through stuff now.
So,
But
my
going
count.
back,
Oh, sorry.
yes, your counterpoint to it.
My counterpoint is, so he downplays it. This is what has happened, and now the left flood the internet and say he's irresponsible. How could he do this? A president would have told us the reality of the situation. They vilified him for his action of downplaying. Other hypothesis, he doesn't downplay. Let's say in a scenario he doesn't downplay, and he literally comes out and literally oversells and says this is bad, and we're going to implement mandatory masks. We're going to take all the necessary measures to get this under control, and that's going to require some stuff that you don't like. No bars, no this, no that, no school, no your masks have to be on. Grocery stores limit 50 people a
You
person.
think both
Whatever.
the Republicans and Democrats would rally against him and say
I would say the left would say he's literally Hitler. He's authoritarian. He's yielding his power too much and just beating the stick down.
Wielding, not yielding.
Wielding the power. It's the cab. It's my cottonmouth cab.
The only reason I corrected it is because they're exactly the opposite.
They're completely opposite. You're 100% right.
One is like he is yielding his
also like to
power
point out
because he
the
could have
further-
pushed.
The further I get into the cab, the more of my little slips happen, like wield and yield. And last week, last week, I said like, oh, they've been at war for like 1,000 years, whatever.
It's like Israel didn't exist.
Yeah, but I'm just making the
sure.
emphasis at a long time.
We're gonna make mistakes in this podcast.
Right.
Anyway.
So he's wielding too much power and he's being a bully with it, and he's literally Hitler. And so now he can't win when he's serious, and it reveals it. Now he can't win when he's plays it conservative. Where's this Goldilocks zone for the left to ever say that Trump did something right? And I don't think it ever exists. I don't think it exists. There's nothing he can do, or how he approaches the situation. It's always going to be bad to them.
I think it's a small minority of that sort of never Trump left group.
There is a never Trump right group too.
There is.
They
Hats
are.
off Lincoln Project.
The Lincoln Project.
And,
But in general,
formerly
This
Conway,
this
George
episode
Conway.
is sponsored by the Lincoln Project.
But so, yeah, do I think that you would see a very steep backlash to it? Absolutely. But I think it's a matter of Trump, despite how much I think he does dumb things, I don't think he is actually that dumb.
I think what you're
right?
getting at.
And
Is he an
think-
idiot or an evil genius?
Why I think it's neither.
Neither, actually.
I don't think he's an idiot. I just think he's, there's a difference between being.
He's
an
not
idiot-
playing fourth dimensional chess.
Sure, he's not. And I feel like to me with Trump, it's like I think part of why more moderate or more sane liberals, as you might call us and other people we know.
I would call you liberals.
Yeah.
Just liberals.
But we're
liberals.
not leftists.
Huh?
We're not leftists. You wouldn't say.
No.
Yeah. Why we
I'm gonna do
why
my
we
Antifa
feel
tattoo.
strongly against we feel skeptical of a Trump in most scenarios is that he's sold a lot of his political capital by being the person he is, by being the sort of like
Anti-establishment?
no. He's
okay,
not,
so
he's not
he's-
anti-establishment.
No, but that's what he came up. That's what his soul.
Yeah,
I'm
so-
going to drain the swamp. I'm going to clean it up.
I will say,
No,
no,
of course not,
he
of course
doubled down on the swamp. So I think Trump, the candidate, I mean, he's always been a salesman. His entire career is the showmanship behind it.
That is
So-
that is his skill.
Yeah.
That is his skill. He's
very good at building cardboard houses with gold logos of the Trump name.
a
on
la
them.
Arrested Development, Sudden Valley.
Yeah. So when it comes down to it, I think Trump's position with this, the correct play that would have sort of threaded the needle, that Goldilocks zone, as you put it, is you can downplay it, but you don't have to actively provide disinformation. It's going to go away. I'm going to open up the economy by Easter. It's going to go away with winter. This is honestly not a big
Summer.
deal.
It was summer.
Summer, sorry.
The sun, it'll just go away. Like
It'll go away.
Like
It's
a
a
miracle.
miracle.
Yeah.
And then his entire, I do not think,
Do you think any of those are just, I'm going to say these to buy time till we figure this out?
no, I don't, because he actively tried to push policy to reinforce them.
And also contextually, in countries where they didn't, pursue policy or pursue a public message
they're
like
doing
this,
phenomenal,
they're
right?
doing much better than us.
I think Sweden was
So
one.
Sweden
Yeah,
didn't
Sweden.
close. They had a massive death toll of the elderly.
Sure.
Right.
Like
So what
they just
happens
did.
is you get a huge spike and then a huge drop off and it flattens, or you just get this constant.
But there's a
It's not there.
I'm
Most of the European bloc right now is going through multiple waves of COVID now because they did. They locked
Italy
down.
got rocked.
Italy got rocked up ahead, and then they stabilized through. Now they're getting rocked again. France is getting rocked as well because, and you can always say that there's cultural differences behind it, but the truth of the matter is, A, we don't have a vaccine for this. B, we don't have a standard response that is consistent because unlike social unrest, which are very local sort of issues. Like people weren't protesting about gas prices in the U.S. when they were burning down Paris. Yellow vest protests.
Yeah, the yellow vesper. Yep.
So that is something that can be held in locally within your country. A pandemic is not. It will go through land borders.
It cares not about
About
politics.
Exactly. Not about politics, creed, nationality. Apparently ethnicity it does,
And
but
age.
and age. So these are things that we should have had. It's almost as if we had a global body that provided guidance on this, like almost
Some
like
sort
a
of
World
Health Organization?
Yeah.
Or institution or something. Like I don't know what word you'd use for the third one, but
Yeah, organization, collective, if
collective.
you will.
Yeah.
The WHO did put out guidance on what to do, and it included masks, socially distance yourselves, and don't engage in sort of all of these behaviors. And Trump was like, nope, they don't know shit. We're going to disregard all of this. States, do what you want.
Give us the data. Don't give it to the WHO
Two
anymore.
questions.
And well,
this then.
Trump's piece behind it, which I saw the value in at the time, and arguably I still do because it is working, is he tried pushing the burden of action down to the states. And this is arguably a push